Hi everyone, so I'm Eric, and I wanted to discuss today about one of the big challenges for the AR and VR market besides the traditional challenges such as resolution, latency, field of view, lack of content, etc., etc. So one of the challenge, actually, where's the clicker? Ah, here we go. Yeah, I'll go to the next. So one of the challenges is intrusiveness and invasiveness of HMDs today. So here, as you know, the goal of AR, VR is to make you feel somewhere else and in another space and doing something different that you would do in the real life. So there are really two types of interaction: the inbound interaction, what you feel from the VR environment, and the outbound interaction, so what you can do, you can interact with the environment. So on the inbound side, it's basically your 5 senses, right? It's about sight, about hearing, about smell, about taste, about haptic feedback, etc., etc. Basically the 5 senses. And how you can interact with the environment, it's even more broad, so you can interact with gaze, just the talk just before me. You can interact with your voice. You can interact with gesture, with facial expression, with body expression, with locomotion. And thanks to Elon Musk, in a couple of years, you'll be able to interact with your mind, probably. So that's a lot of things. So what's available today? I see that there is a problem with the slide here, but basically, you've got the site, which is solved. The screens are good enough. The sound is good, and how you can interact, it's a little bit with we've got some push, some knock, some interaction that are available today, a bit of locomotion, but not a lot yet. And yet, that's how it looks like today. So on the left side, the Vive is we can argue that it's probably the best VR experience you can have today. And on the right side, that's the most consumer-friendly headset on the market today. But though both of them are already very invasive and intrusive. And when you look at what's going to come in the next years, in the next 1 to 2 years, you'll have a bit more. You'll have gaze. You'll have a bit of facial expression, better gesture, better locomotion. So that will add a lot of devices, wires and stuff for you, so making the experience even more intrusive and invasive. We may end up look like something like that. So what X and VR is working on, or that vision in Ready Player One, described in Ready Player One book. So even more intrusive. So being a geek, I don't care. It's fun. It's probably good for geeks. That's okay. But I think it's not good enough for mass market adoption. So we need to do something about it. What we want to have at the end is an experience more like that, described by Bruce Brannett in his short movie World Builder, where you have a seamless experience. You don't need to wear a lot of things. You can interact, you can hear, you can smell, you can touch things totally naturally. And that's what probably is going to drive mass adoption of HMDs, VR and AR market. So I think it's important to already work on that and make that happen faster. So how can we help to achieve that vision of being more natural? By using advanced sensor and better software. So that's what we are doing at SoftKinetic. So we are developing a technology called time of flight. So for those who don't know that's a sensor. That's a kind of an image sensor, but instead of capturing light and color, it's capturing distance. So it gives 3D representation of the scene in real time, point cloud, surface, etc., in a reasonable fashion, meaning good frame rate, decent precision, decent power consumption. So that's a sensor which is coming on the market, already available. I'll talk about it in a minute. So that's one thing we can do. So you can see today it's really becoming mature, good size, can be embedded in HMDs. The other piece that we're bringing, it's software for human interaction. We are specialized in hand tracking and full body tracking, but we also do in-situ tracking and a 3D reconstruction because our time-of-flight sensor can really help on that as well. So, two of the possible interaction with the world, one of them it's natural hand interaction. And how can we solve that? It's by using a time-of-flight sensor, so very small, plus hand tracking software. So, as you know, you're all technical persons, I guess, or at least saving AR and VR. None of the technologies are perfect, so there are pros and cons using time of flight and the natural interaction. On the positive side, it's very intuitive. You don't have to learn anything. Just get in and you know how to use your hands. It's real-life interaction. So anything you can do in real life, you can do it with the technology. Grabbing object, pushing objects. And when you think about it, most of the interaction you do with your hands in real life, it's a physical interaction. There is not a lot of actually of gesture recognition or poses recognition. And because it's really your own hands, it's not synthetic hands. I mean, if you have longer fingers, you'll have longer fingers in the VR environment. So it really strengthens the feeling of presence, the connection with your own body. It's hands-free, so you don't have to hold anything. So you won't have your controller out of battery or something like that. And one of the very important things that hands are a very, very powerful communication tool. When you talk, you actually use your hands a lot. When you want to explain something, you talk, but you show things. And so having the ability to use your own hands naturally is very powerful. So it's not perfect, of course. When you are using your own hands without any device, you don't have buttons. And buttons are really useful. It's very precise. It's very reactive. But here you won't have that. No haptic feedback. But you'll see that I think the next presentation is talking about that. So that may be solved. And tracking robustness. Today it's okay, it's great, you can do a lot of things, but it's not perfect yet. So it's not, as I said, it's not as precise as a gamepad or having buttons, stuff like that, but it's getting better. Here we go. So the hand tracking software, I talked about it, yeah. And the sensor on the HMD. It looks like you've mixed up my slide, right? Okay, it's the same. No, I'm going backward. That's why. Wrong button, sorry. Here we go. Yeah, so the good news is that a lot of companies are convinced that natural hand interaction may really help to improve the intrusiveness of HMDs. Of course, we're working on that, we're providing solutions for that. Microsoft as well, Meta, Gestigan, a pure software company, Intel and DeepMotion, they are also very advanced in natural hand interaction, but those two companies are unfortunately not using time-of-flight sensors yet. And then the second outbound interaction that we can make more natural is full body tracking. And so for that, you can also use a time-of-flight sensor plus a full body tracking software. Okay, so again, it's not perfect, but again, the positive sides are the same than for hand tracking. It's very intuitive. It's really real-life interaction. The feeling of presence is very strong, and you've got your body free. You don't need to wear any devices on you. The cons is that today you still need an external sensor to track you, so it doesn't make the setup easier. You don't have the haptic feedback, and the tracking robustness is okay, but not perfect yet. Sometimes it can fail. So again, multiple companies are working on that. Microsoft, of course, ourselves, a couple of startups, Mimesis, you can check them out. That's very interesting what they're doing, etc., etc. So that problem is being worked on and probably will come out good in the AR and VR pretty soon. So because it's the tool and product track here, I also wanted to give you a status about the maturity and the availability of the technology. And so in certain markets, it's totally mature and available in production, very robust, very good. Good news is that we are in full production in automotive. We do also a lot in drones and robotic industry. For mobile and AR, VR, it's coming. We are working on that. So quickly, example on what we do in automotive. It's really about natural interaction. So as I said, it's in production. Here, I encourage you to go buy a BMW 7 Series. It's a great car, right? Well, it's a bit expensive, yeah, correct. But now they're putting the technology in all the other series. The 5 is just out now, then it will be 3 and other models, and it's coming to other cars manufacturers as well. And well, so as you can imagine, a very high level of robustness and maturity is required to get in that industry. So I really wanted to give you more assurance that it's going to get in the VR and AR pretty soon. We needed to reach a very high level of maturity to be able to be resistant to shocks and vibration, heat in a car. That's very tough. But one interesting point actually is you could ask yourself why it's first on a car and not in consumer electronics. Actually, it was a surprise for us as well. But I think the reason is that in the car there are less constraints actually, even though the quality is very high, but there are less constraints than in consumer electronics. And the reason is that first, in a car you've got more power. In a mobile device, power is really an issue. Second thing is that it's a very limited set of gestures, so we can tweak and make sure it always works. We're really close to 100% true positive recognition. And most important thing is that in a car it's a controlled environment. It's always the same. We know exactly what the cabin will look like. We know exactly where the camera will be. And it's not the case with the HMDs or consumer electronics in general. People are walking around, different environment, so it's very different. So that's probably the reason why it has been successful first in cars. So, for drones, we have our product there as well. So it's not for gesture yet, but it's coming as well. But it's for obstacle avoidance. And the reason why it has been successful there, it's because our technology, time of flight, doesn't require a baseline like you have in stereo cameras, where you need a separation and distance between the two sensors, which is very annoying requirement for drones, because drones are tending to become smaller and smaller, so they don't want to have a baseline anymore. Of course, we also need a very high resistance to shock and vibration. And again, the time of flight is very, very strong for that. There is no calibration, so you can drop the camera, it still works. And we can really detect very thin obstacles like electric wires or fences that other sensors cannot do. Yeah, so mobile VR and AR, as I said, it's not fully there yet. We're already working on that, but it's really coming soon. As I said, the size and the cost is getting there. So thank you very much. Just for information, the devices are available on the website, the dev kits, and a couple of software. So if you want to start playing with that technology, please visit our website. Thank you very much. Yep, questions? Yep.
So you mentioned earlier there's other technology besides time-of-flight. So can you tell us a bit more about what other technology besides time-of-flight are available and what the differences between in terms of cost?
Okay, I'll try to answer that quickly. So if you want to compare sensors or technology that can acquire depth and 3D information, there are three main categories. So time of flight, the one I just discussed here. Stereo vision, two cameras, can be active or passive. You can add infrared or not, but remain stereo. And structural light, where you shine a pattern in the scene, and the sensor is looking at the deformation. The two last I mentioned, stereo and structural light. So first, they require a baseline between the two sensors. So, and that defines more or less the range you can look at. Not the case with time of flight. With time of flight, you can see very close and very far with the same sensor, and you can change that on the flight, so it's more flexible. Other big advantage of time of flight, as I said here, it's very resistant to shocks, because there is no calibration needed between components. So even if it falls or get a lot of vibration, it still works. With the stereo or structural light, it's very delicate. If the two sensors are twisted, then it doesn't work anymore at all. Yeah, so there are a couple of advantages like that. Maybe one last would be computation requirement. So time of flight, it's a pure analog device, so meaning you get the distance information for free, right? Where with a stereo or structural light, you need to compute the distance. So you lower the computation requirement. I think we probably have to move along. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you very much. Thanks.